Welcome back to the Saturday Scholars College Football Podcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. That is Gonzo. I am Shub, and we are here to do Week 3 recap. Let's go. We are Zanless tonight. He filled out his picks earlier. We'll get to that later in this pod on the second half. But Gonzo, it's time to talk about Week 4 recap. It was a hell of a week, man. It lived up to the billing. And I spent almost all day, pretty much all day watching games because, that's what I do. That's what we do here. We just love this sport. And we're degenerates when it comes to Saturdays in the fall. That's why we're the Saturday Scholars. We're the Saturday degenerates, too. And I enjoyed it. And there's a lot to talk about. There is a lot to talk about. So one thing I want to mention before we get started here.
70.
For those of you on podcast, I'm wearing my Dolphins shirt. For those of you who don't know, I'm from South Florida, born and raised. So I'm a Dolphins fan. And yeah, we hung a 70 burger on the Denver Broncos. And no, that wasn't the Miami Hurricanes beating the Colorado Buffaloes 70-20. That was an NFL game, by the way. And Devon Achane is on my fantasy team. So I just want to throw that one out there. Drafted him late in a keeper league, but
and I want to throw a grudge out to the Saints. How do you blow a 3-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter? I mean, I swear, all you got to do is run the ball. I mean, and you made Jordan Love look like Bryce Young. It was infuriating. I hate losing the Green Bay. It is the most aggravating thing in the world. And the Saints are just so frustrating. So that's all I have to say about that.
There's plenty more Gonzo grudges to come ahead, but I will say this from a college perspective here. If you're an A&M fan, watching Devon Achane today and then seeing, how much he was underutilized with Jimbo's antiquated offense, it's just like, you just got to be saying to yourself, like, this is what you have in the building. Like that's the talent you have. But anyways.
We've seen that before with many guys, unfortunately. I mean, Texas Tech had Pat Mahomes, and how close did they ever get to a Big 12 championship?
They got to 7-5 with Patrick Mahomes. That's was Texas Tech's ceiling. Yeah, but tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong here.
All right.
Is Texas A&M the last few years, how much different are they than 2012 to 2017 LSU? I feel like Texas A&M is 2012 to 2017 LSU.
I mean, I've got colleagues who could definitely speak better on it, who were here during those times. But I'd say in terms of the offensive philosophy, it's let's run the ball, let's let our defense, be the main unit in charge, and let's not look attractive at all offensively. And then we're going to put guys in the league who are going to blow up, and everyone will look back and be like, how'd you not win a championship when you had OBJ, Jarvis Landry, and Jeremy Hill all on the same roster?
Yep.
So I think that's a good comp, Shoop. It's pretty funny.
Seems pretty good comp to me, but we'll leave it at that. All right, let's get into these games. There's a lot to talk about, as stated before. All right, Gonzo, the floor is yours. Where do you want to start today? I kind of have a game I think we should start on. It was between a team that rhymes with Ohio Tate and Notre Dame. Something like that.
That defense was Notre Dame at the end. So, I tried to get my eyes on this one. It was concurrently during the LSU game, and I was out watching LSU with friends. So that was the predominant concern at the time. As for the Fighting Irish, I mean, I want to start with the Gonzo downer. So I think Sam Hartman's Heisman chances might be dashed. I just don't think I hate that the sport is shaped this way, but I just don't think if you're quarterbacking an 11-1 Notre Dame putting up good numbers, I just don't know how the voters will perceive that. I personally don't think that way, but I'm just saying what I think how the country will view that. Now, with that aside, that's heartbreaking. I mean, You played your butt off at home. It's the toughest team you're going to play. I mean, yeah, I'd say they're tougher than USC. It's the toughest team you're going to play. Playoff aspirations on the line, and you fold on defense, and that is your head coach's. That is his area of expertise, and it was just so deflating. And I took Notre Dame to win too, so I was a little annoyed at that. But that sucks. And that's my big takeaway is Notre Dame faltering, then Ohio State winning on the road. And I probably should give them credit for winning on the road, especially with McCord being the newly appointed guy for sure. So let me spin the angle and say, congrats to you, Ohio State. You went into a tough environment and won. And that's a big confidence builder right there.
Well, I'll say this. I think Notre Dame definitely should have won this game. That last drive that Ohio State had at the end. I mean, you think about all the multiple things that had to go Ohio State's way in order to get that. The touchdown with 3 seconds left.
Man.
Well,
I mean, man.
They got it inside the one with 3 seconds left, and then the touchdown, which we thought was a walk-off touchdown, which you rarely see. That's very rare to have a walk-off touchdown as the clock expires. 1 second left on the clock. It was over from there, but Ohio State has the big receivers for a reason. Emeka Egbuka, he really stepped up to the plate. Notre Dame pretty much bottled up Marvin Harrison. Harrison only had 3 receptions, but luckily if you're Ohio State, you're just loaded with insane receivers. So you have a guy like Emeka Egbuka to step up. You have a guy like Cade Stover to go 7 for 52 as well. Both those guys got 7 for 52. And also Kyle McCord, I mean, 21 to 37, not the greatest, but we all watched that game. He looked pretty solid to me, and especially at the end, he led that game-winning drive when it mattered most. It's just, you say what you want about Notre Dame play calling. I was really impressed, Ohio State play calling with Ryan Day's 4th down calls, because Ohio State couldn't buy a 4th down conversion to save its life in this game. But I think Notre Dame's defense really stepped up to the plate. I still think Notre Dame is they clearly are a legitimate top 10 team. I mean, if you look at Sam Hartman's stat line, it's still pretty good. I still think he had a relatively good day. Yeah, there was a couple plays there that Ohio State defenders had right in their hands. I still thought he played well, considering it's a Jim Knowles Ohio State defense, which it's earlier in the season, but as the season plays out, I think we're going to realize this is a legitimate top 5, top 3 defense that they went up against. So it's not surprising to see them bottle up one of the better quarterbacks in college football. And I hate to say it, Notre Dame fans, I hate to tell you this, but you know what post-game win expectancy was?
85.
In favor of Notre Dame?
Yes.
Well, you weren't aggressive enough, because post-game win expectancy suggested Notre Dame should have won this game 96% of the time.
Oh,
that hurts, man. That hurts. I think that might be the biggest notable flip of post-game win expectancy in terms of who won versus who should have won so far this year, at least that we know of. That's tough, man. Notre Dame had this.
And I mean, the kid had the pick, man. Not to cut you off. He did. It reminded me of Texas against Tech, the Crabtree year. I mean, you had the interception, and now he's got to live with that. He's got to live with that forever, unfortunately. It's not his fault. I mean, it's just a play that wasn't made. I mean, it happens all the time in the game, but that is just brutal.
And Notre Dame fans have been hearing this forever, oh, Notre Dame, they're overrated. They never win the big games. They're just mediocre as hell. They're 10-2. They never play any good teams. Whenever they play the good teams, they always lose. And yeah, there's a lot of truth to that statement, but they've been hearing that for a while. They've been hearing, oh, Marcus Freeman's not the guy. He's a step down from Marcus Kelly, yada, yada, yada. There'll never be, up to the Brian Kelly standard. I mean, so close to what, how big this would have been for Marcus Freeman? You know how big this would have been for Notre Dame? I mean, I don't know if we were ready for Notre Dame to be actually that good and get that type of win. I don't know if we were ready for that.
No, I don't think we were. And I think in the long run, though, this might be good for them because, you got Duke. Imagine beating Ohio State and then Duke comes in and slaps you this weekend. And I'm never going to losing. Nobody wants to lose. But I'm curious to see how they bounce back from this. Look at this. They got USC on the schedule. They got Clemson on the schedule. They still got some marquee teams that are coming up there. I mean, coming up on the schedule, not going to South Bend. Well, USC is, but yeah, you got a tough schedule. And then, oh my gosh, you really have some brutal, bad teams on here, but I'm not going to get into all that. We did that during We didn't do Notre
Well,
Dame on win totals, but I will say I did take their over though. As just a ZKS, Gonzo move, I did think they'd win. Was it 9.5? So this is still a double-digit win team. That was the toughest game. It's the best defense you're going to play. Sam Hartman's still good. I mean, not many quarterbacks, not even Michael Penix, might go in and just light it up against that Ohio State defense. So it literally came down to the last play. So I think if you're Notre Dame, this sucks. You're hanging your head, but at potentially 11-1, if you can get there,
you
depending
can't
how the
hang your head
landscape
for
of
too
college.
long. You cannot
Yeah,
hang your head for too long you got to go to Duke next week. And it's at Duke, by the way, which we'll get to that on picks, but
yeah, we
that
will,
just screams letdown opportunity, man. But we'll get to that. But real quick, a couple things. So as far as Notre Dame, you look at the rest of the schedule: at Duke, at Louisville, USC, Pitt, at Clemson, Wake, at Stanford. We're third of the way through the season, so now I can rumble off the schedule quickly like that. What do you think is Notre Dame's final record? I think I see them finishing 10-2 or 9-3. But 11-1 is definitely a possibility. It's definitely a possibility.
So, given that I took their over, which I'm trying to find on my little document here. So 9. So I'm gonna go 10-2, and you probably lose the USC in a high scoring game. They beat Clemson. Like I like their chances. Oh yeah, no, FSU showed us it's possible. So, I'll go 10-2.
Well, I'll say this. I agree with you. I think 10-2 or 9-3, but best case scenario, if they run the table the rest of the way, that's a college football playoff level resume there, because they're going to have some good wins on that resume if they run the table the rest of the way, which I think is possible. I think Notre Dame is capable of that, but I don't think they're going to do it. I would say likely not. But Ohio State, on the other hand, what are your takeaways if you're Ohio State? I know Ryan Day had some takeaways from this, and shout out him calling out Lou Holtz. And of all people, that was so random. Like did anybody have any clue that Lou Holtz even said that?
I guess if you watched like the Pat McAfee show, you would have known. I didn't even see anything though from all the Twitter accounts I follow. I didn't see anything like Friday or anything indicating that he called out Ohio State. And also, Lou's an 80-something-year-old man. So like when I hear her courser say anything, I'm just like, oh well, they're just saying whatever. Who cares? Like they're elderly and they'll say whatever they want. So I don't really put much stock into it. And I guess Ryan was pressed. Like,
well, I mean, he was pressed, man. You could tell there was a lot of bottled up frustration that he let
I
out
mean,
there. And I get it. I get it. Like, he's been having people tell him you can't beat Michigan, you can't win the big games. Like, I get it,
but let's keep okay. The big game thing, there's some absolute credence there. But you did play in a natty. Granted, that 2020 is the most asterisk ridden thing I've ever seen in my life. But you did quote unquote play in a natty, ran out the building, and you were a half decent kicker away from playing in the college football playoff. So, I like Ryan Day as a whole, but I could tell that like the losses are the ones that really, really, really get to him more than what has been a very successful tenure so far. And remember, Urban Meyer only won one title at Ohio State. They were perennial contenders, but only won one title and played ever in one national championship there for the Buckeyes. So, I mean, I'd say Ryan Day just has to win himself a title, and he's right there for Urban Meyer.
I agree with that. Well, I think we've talked enough about this game. We'll talk a little bit more about the Big Ten here in a little bit and how Ohio State stacks up in the Big Ten East, because I think the Big Ten East now is actually very interesting. But we got to get to Florida State Clemson. I mean, we got to get to that game before we move on here. Hell of a game. Ohio State Notre Dame, hell of a game. Like, great week for college football. FSU Clemson was phenomenal. It totally delivered. And it was the noon Eastern kickoff, and I loved it. I know you watched it.
I watched the whole game. I watched this entire game. And man, with FSU, I was like, what is going on? I mean, Clemson had them pressed. Cade Klubnik finally looked like a 5-star. I mean, he finally looked like the quarterback that he was touted to be. The Garrett Riley system seemed to have been working. And at the end of the day, that was just a heartbreaking finish from the Clemson perspective, I 100% was like, okay, this kicker that Dabo brought in from, University of Phoenix is going to come in and make the kick. Of course. Like, of course he's going to make the kick because Dabo and family and God's name, image, and likeness, it was just going to hit. And when that kid missed a 20-yarder, I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. And then going to overtime, I even still thought that Clemson had kind of the upper hand there because they're at home. Maybe they go for 2 on FSU, and I didn't think FSU was just going to 4-down stop them. So the Seminoles, I mean, these are the kind of wins you need to get to have magical seasons. That strip sack fumble, that was a game changer. If they don't get that, I don't think FSU would have won. Jordan Travis definitely, I think, had a little bit going on with the shoulder. And the guys, Keon Coleman stepped up when it mattered. The defense stepped up when it mattered. And man, it'd be interesting if these two had a rematch. I think we'll need some wacky things to happen, but heck of a win for FSU. I mean, they ended 7 years of painfully losing to Clemson, whether by 60, whether by 10. Great win for the Seminoles.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it had been 2014 since they last beat Clemson. That's a pretty long time. That just kind of illustrates the sort of reign of success for Clemson. Yeah, exactly. I mean, when these two teams are at their best, this is a great rivalry game. It always delivers, but the teams need to be at their best. And this year they definitely are up there. I think it's very fair to say Clemson was the better team for 3 out of 4 quarters.
Yes.
I think Clemson was the better team. I agree with you. That strip sack fumble, if not for that, I think FSU is an L this past week. And the whole conversation is totally different. The narrative about Clemson is totally different. That one's going to haunt Dabo for a long time. This one is going to haunt Clemson. And I agree with you about Cade Klubnik. Like you said, it finally looked like they just let him go. Like, let the horse run wild. He finally did look like a 5-star. He wasn't perfect by any means. The strip sack fumble was brutal. But other than that, it was like, man, if you're a Clemson fan, you're like, where the hell has this been? Where was that against Duke? Where was that against Duke? That's what you're saying if you're a Clemson fan. And if you're an FSU fan, it's kind of interesting to me because I know the shoulder with Jordan Travis and all that. FSU fans were saying this is great, but they weren't happy with this win. And I get it. It was sloppy. It was ugly. They were a little fortunate to win. But, like, come on, man. You guys, it's not like you guys have been good for a while now. You guys, this is your season. You gotta appreciate it.
So do we like this win if there's a 10 next to Clemson? I really think this gets viewed as, unranked Clemson on the road. Like, you beat Clemson in Death Valley. Yep. I mean, I'm getting to the point like with these Bama losses where it's like I can remember where I was and what I was doing when Clemson lost and B lost a game, in Clemson, South Carolina. So not just everyone goes in there and wins. This is a big deal. And I think for like the rational FSU fans, it's like, no, like we beat a team who's had our number for 7 years. This is huge. I don't care if they were 0-4, beating Clemson in Death Valley is a big deal because that's a talented roster. Because when you like throughout the record, that's a talented roster. That team has 5 stars. It was not like I've been more mad about the BC win than I would about this win, for goodness sakes.
I completely agree. No, I think it's a fringe part of Noles fans that were upset about this, which,
of course,
again, and I respect some of those people. I was kind of surprised to see them complaining about this win, which is absurd to me. But anyways, if you're...
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, I didn't think they were going to stop them 4 downs in overtime. Like, I was legitimately shocked, Shub, that they stopped the Cade Klubnik pass. There was no PI called, and the game was over. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I thought they were going to hand the ball to Will Shipley, first down, they stopped them. Like, I still can't believe it. Like,
I agree. And if from the Clemson angle here, if you're FSU, this is phenomenal. It's enormous. Your dream season is very much looking alive. FSU needs to stay healthy, but they kind of have some weaker opponents over the next few weeks. They got Virginia Tech at home next week, who's awful. We'll get into them later. Then they got Syracuse at home, which honestly, Syracuse very quietly is 4-0. They're not bad. Duke, So teams they should beat coming up, but teams that, you can't completely just play like crap.
You mess around.
Minus Virginia Tech. They can play like crap and still beat Virginia Tech. But that's the
They're in
point.
the BC.
FSU has a chance here to get healthy before they run down into Miami. You got Duke there, can't trip up. So this rest of the schedule for FSU is looking very manageable. I don't know if they're going to go undefeated, but I think 11-1 is the most likely outcome when I look at this schedule for FSU. I think there will be a slip up, but I think 11-1 is looking like the most likely outcome for FSU when I stare down the remainder of this schedule.
No, I can agree with that.
And as far as Clemson, listen, it's got to be tough. I'm sure the Dabo hot takes are just flying off the board there right now. But listen, they were the better team for a majority of this game. They outgained FSU 429 to 311. In terms of total success rate, they had a 44% success rate to just Florida State's 37%. This is a game that Clemson wins more often than not. Again, strip sack fumble really big. It sucks, but it sucks. I get it, but you have to be pleased with what you saw from Cade Klubnik and the defense too. Clemson's defense really stepped it up, I thought. Their playmakers really showed up. I mean, Keon Coleman, that overtime touchdown, like nobody in the country, not even Alabama or Georgia's defenders are going to defend that.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
Nope.
That's Keon Coleman. He's going to be a top 10 pick in the draft. So it sucks. They're 0-2 in ACC play, man. They're toast. They're done.
Insane. I mean,
they're 0-2 in conference play.
I will say, Shub, about them being toast, though. You can always count on the ACC to find a way to get in its own way. Like UNC, this is the window, but they'll find a way to mess around and lose to one of their lesser. Look, they're doing it with Pitt yesterday. I'm not trying to segue into the Pitt game, but I'm saying, like, but even though we want to count Clemson out, man, like the ACC.
Okay, but
I'm with you. Like, I think they're probably toast, but don't be surprised if we're in the last week and you are on offline are like, dude, like Clemson could sneak in if like these two things happened and one of them's already happened.
The problem is Clemson, they already have head-to-head losses to two other ACC contenders.
Yes.
And on top of that, it's not like they're playing a bunch of Virginia and Virginia Techs and BCs. The Clemson's remaining ACC schedule at Syracuse this week, that is
always
trap half. Wake
always
at Miami.
Miami might actually maybe this is the year for the Canes, and I would legitimately be happy for them.
At NC State, Georgia Tech at home, and then UNC at home. So yeah, a couple wins, but like majority of the rest of that schedule is tougher teams in the ACC. Like there's probably another loss in there.
Yeah, no, within
there might be another loss this week.
I
think they're toast.
I was very excited to hear because Dabo had the pre-written script of, well, they take a lot of transfers over there at Florida State, and we don't need to do that here at Clemson. Look at I was ready for it. And the fact that he did get beat by a bunch of transfers, I'm not gonna lie. It was kind of funny. And listen, that's just the name of the game in college football nowadays. I hate to say that, but like, dude, if you want to win, I'm not saying you gotta throw money out there, but taking in some guys to help improve the roster outside of high school recruiting, we have seen it time and time again. It is becoming part of the success to consistently win. Unless you're Georgia, but Georgia's a whole different stratosphere. They're like the one exception to that rule. But even they take some guys.
Agreed. All right. Well, we've talked a lot about these two games. We got to pick up the pace here and move on. What are we rapid firing here?
Let's rapid fire a game that we all unfortunately didn't have the right read on with Ole Miss Bama. Ole Miss offense. Why did you sell us like that? I mean, I know like Bama got away with some targeting calls on Jackson Dart. I mean, they absolutely just obliterated him.
Dart might need to go in the concussion protocol after that game.
Yeah, I mean, he
had his helmet come off like 3 different times.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty hot about it. And like Bama defensively played well, which that's a Saban team, not surprised. But it's like, again, like Jalen Milroe was not overly impressive. I mean, I don't know if you had saw Shub. I mean, they blocked it. Bama blocks a punt, has the ball on the 1 yard line and then snaps it 15 yards past Jalen, though you could argue he maybe could have caught the snap. And then I think they ended up kicking a field goal, but then he had an interception in the end zone. And this is just a game I wish had been played in Oxford, because maybe the crowd factor, maybe Ole Miss would have gutted it out. But like Lane, this offensive genius, can only muster 10 points when you've seen him score 50 against much better Alabama teams in the past.
Yep. And I have a Zanny bar to give out. I know Zan's not here, but I have a Zanny bar to give out.
You got authority.
Yeah, I have authority. The Zanny bar is going to Lane Kiffin. Buddy, you can't be chirping like that and say you figured out who's calling the plays for Alabama. Oh, it's not who we think it is. We think we know who's calling the plays. And then you only score 10 points. Come on now. And not even this game. This just goes back over the last few years. What did we say last week on our predictions video? We said we're picking Ole Miss over Bama. We do this every year. We fall in the trap because we like just punishing ourselves. And here we are doing again. We did it again. We picked Ole Miss. The last 3 years in a row, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin have had the team to go in and beat Alabama. Lane chirps before the game all week long, and they don't do it. 3 years in a row now. I think they had a good enough team where they could have clipped them at least once. I don't think clipping Bama once in 3 years is like an insurmountable task. And
no,
yeah, Alabama was the better team. Clearly, Jalen Milroe is the quarterback for Alabama. And yeah, that Alabama defense, they showed up. That first drive, I unfortunately tweeted that Ole Miss looked pretty sharp. And after that first drive where they scored the touchdown, nothing. Bama's defense showed up.
His hand on the stove. I mean, with everybody, with us, for believing that Ole Miss can go and win this game, for me, for picking them more often than not, and for Lane Kiffin, like, you would think after the popcorn debacle, you would just just don't say anything. I know you love to agitate Saban, Kiffin, but dude, like, the results aren't backing it up. And leading at the half and losing close, that's not going to cut it. No one cares that you were up 7-6 at one point. And I'm not saying anyone's making a big deal about that, but it's like, it's just frustrating. Like, if I'm an Ole Miss fan, I'm very aggravated because, like you said, Shub, like, the talent has been there, but the execution has not.
And I think Ole Miss could be cruising for a bruising here because you know who they got next week? Mm-hmm. They got LSU. I know it's at home.
Up to Oxford, though. I mean,
Jackson Dart took a beating in this game. That offense took a beating.
Yeah, and they'll take one next week too. I'm not saying the game's gonna be a blowout, but I'm saying, physically, this is that kind of gauntlet that they're getting into, and
their schedule is very tough.
As someone who took their over, which, let me find what we had in win totals.
I think it was 7.5.
7.5. Yeah, I mean, I'm nervous. Like, this could be a 7-5 team. I mean, I definitely need them to kind of squeak one out that we really didn't anticipate to at least get that 8-4. So we'll see how it goes. What's good is you get Bama out of the way early, but it just sucks when they probably could have beaten them if they had just shown some kind of pulse on offense. I want to bring us to a game that didn't lack for offense. Shoot. Oregon State, Wazoo. I'm not picking against Wazoo until maybe they play like the top tier in the Pac-12 again. They have been so impressive, and they're underrated because they play out they play out west, and unfortunately nobody cares. We do, but the national, nobody for the most part cares about the Pac-12. This was a great game. It not as close as the score seems to indicate. I was able to catch up through highlights. I mean, Cam Ward, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and Oregon State prides himself on being a defensively sound team, and he cooked them. So, hats off to them. I thought DJU played well in response. Just a great game that fell under the radar because of just where it fell during the season. But I'm very excited to watch the Cougs be good again, man. It hasn't been like this since Leach, so it's really, really fun.
Completely agreed. I was able to get eyes on this one. I watched this one all the way up until the fourth quarter, and I wasn't able to watch the fourth quarter, but that's when Oregon State put up a comeback. And yeah, it was not close at all. Wazoo was up by multiple scores going in towards the end of that game. But what really was the big key for me was these two teams have a big contrast in styles, which they play football. And we talked about that on the prediction video. And we all said we liked Oregon State because we liked them to win with their ground and pound, more physical attack. Wazoo, not necessarily the greatest in the trenches. That's an Oregon State strength. But, of course, when we get these types of matchups, the one way where it can go south pretty quickly for the physical run the ball team is if they get off to a deficit early in the game. And that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately for Wazoo, they got off to a hot start in this game. I mean, they scored on like the first few plays of the game, if I recall. And yeah, how last year we were really hyping up Cam Ward. We were saying Cam Ward might be the most underrated player in the country. At least Zan and I were. I know you weren't on here. But
I share the sentiment.
Yes. Oregon State's defense is no pushover. We all know that. 28 of 34, 404 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 93 QBR. On top of that, he got a rushing touchdown as well. So 5 total touchdowns for Cam Ward. He was involved in every single touchdown score for them. Is it time to throw this man's name into the hats, into the ring of the Heisman contenders? Has Cam Ward arrived? Has he arrived?
I think so. I think in year 2 with Eric, I think if Eric Morris, calling plays for him, it's finally all coming together like they thought. And I hate to look so far ahead, but if this trend keeps up, oh my goodness, the Apple Cup. I mean, we could be talking about Pac-12 title. We could be talking about Heisman implications, potentially playoff. I mean, I think he absolutely should be in that tier. I mean, the quarterback play in the Pac-12 exceeds the rest of the country. And I don't even think that's a hot take. I think that's just a nationally understood statement.
No, I completely agree. And I'm looking at the rest of their schedule. Wazoo now 4-0. I'm looking at this schedule. They got at UCLA next week. And then I think what they have going in their favor is that they kind of draw a few more of the like middle to bottom teams in the Pac-12 versus the other teams that are in contention that draw a lot of the big boys. They got UCLA. They got to go at Oregon, that's going to be a great game. And then, of course, like you said, the Apple Cup later in the year, but that's it.
Game day.
They got Oregon State out of the way. You have 3 of the big boys remaining. And then the rest of the schedule, you got Arizona State, Stanford, Cal, Colorado. That's not that bad of a schedule for what's 2023 Pac-12 standards are. Like, I think this could be 9-3 for Wazoo.
Yeah, 9-3, 10-2, squeak yourself into a New Year's 6 game. I never would have thought when they fully said, Jake Dickert, you're our guy. I never would have thought they were going to reach these kind of heights. And it shows what happens when you land the quarterback and when you get the coordinator that knows how to utilize the quarterback, along with the wide receivers they got are incredible as well. And I don't remember if Dickert was he promoted from OC? Do you recall, Shub?
To be honest, I don't recall off the top of my head.
It don't matter. Point is, he knows how to put people where they need to be, and I love seeing the Pac-12 go out like this. We've said this multiple pods before, but it's really great to see a lot of teams in the conference doing well and ranked. And as for Wazoo, they put themselves in that kind of dark horse role that I thought Oregon State would be in, which the Beavs could still be in. I mean, yeah, you got worked and ended up only losing by 3, but they beat a good team. There's a lot of good teams in that middle tier that we just have not had in the conference in many years past.
That was going to be my next point is if you're Oregon State, I don't know if you can really hang your hats on this. I think you just ran into a surprisingly pretty good Wazoo team out in Pullman, which is a tough place to play on the road. I mean, what's even funny to me is that Oregon State still at 242 rushing yards. Oregon
Yeah,
State,
I mean,
despite being down by multiple scores for a majority of this game, they still were able to get more rushing yards than passing yards, which seems very counterintuitive to
and,
or
and
that happened. But
well, I mean, remember they beat Oregon not throwing the ball.
yeah, no,
So
they did. I
it's
mean, it was just kind of weird how they sort of backdoored their way into playing their style of football, but still not winning. But again,
well,
shout out to the Oregon State rushing attack. It was good. I think DJU, he did play okay, but I don't think we were saying, Oregon State could have a high ceiling because we might be able to see like DJU take that next step, like kicking into gear, sort of like take what Kate Klubnik did for like 2.5 quarters against FSU. Like if it was like, oh man, he's a 5-star. That's right. He finally is playing like a 5-star. If we
yep.
got that at a DJU, that team is a high ceiling, but I still don't think we're seeing that at a DJU. He's better,
No,
but he's not reaching that what his ceiling could be.
and I mean, let's be real. That's still learning a system, learning your personnel. I mean, it's only his 4th game quarterbacking for them.
Yeah, but he is what, a 4th-year senior, I
Oh yeah,
think.
no, I mean, he's a grown adult. I
it
mean,
may be who he is. This may just be the
but
DJU that you get.
well, granted, given that they're playing Utah next week, I think he can be who he is, and they might have a good at home. They might have a good chance. And I'm not gonna show any cards, but I think against a majority of the schedule until the last 2 weekends in November, they're going to be just fine playing the Oregon State brand of football because similar to Wazoo, after Utah for the Beavs, it's basically the mid Pac-12 with UCLA sprinkled in there and then an absolute just death group of Washington and Oregon to close it out.
I agree with you. I still have high hopes for the Beavs rest of the season. But before we move on here, I'm giving out my first Shuby snack of the week. Wide receiver for Washington State, Josh Kelly. 8 for 50.
He was incredible.
Sorry, 8 for 59. What am I talking about? 8 for 159 and 3 touchdowns. Dude looked like a beast out there. And he was shifty. Like he looks like an NFL guy.
Yeah.
So good for Wazoo, good for Josh Kelly, good for these two programs. Hey, these two programs sort of like brother and sister right now with all this realignment stuff going on. So good for them. Hey, not a lot of other podcast outlets talk about these two teams. We just spent a solid, I think, 8 minutes on these two teams. So we gave them the love they deserve. And they're great teams this year. They both should be ranked teams the rest of the year. So good for them.
I think so.
But where do you want to move on to next, Gonzo?
I will touch on this briefly just for the sake of getting it out of the way. Oregon killed Colorado, and that's really all I have to say. Dan Lanning wanted to prove a point, and he did. I actually did feel bad for Colorado because it's not the university's fault. Heck, it's not even Deion's fault. I thought Deion's been really classy of how he's done a lot of this stuff and how he's handled the attention. But I think there were a lot of people who were very happy with how that game went. And Bo Nix is good.
Yes, I think if you're Dan Lanning, this was a great opportunity because everyone's talking about Colorado. I'm sure everyone that's not in Colorado, every coach that's not Deion Sanders probably just hates it, despises it. But if you play Colorado, you have a great opportunity because they're going to have a huge viewership that's going to watch them every week. When you play them, that's your opportunity to get those eyeballs on your team and show, hey, look at all these casual people that are otherwise weren't following college football that now are. They all saw what Oregon did to them. That's a huge, huge image boost for Oregon, for recruits that otherwise wouldn't be watching. They smoked them. As expected, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. I bet some money.
Me too. I was with you. I was with you on that.
Yeah, that's right. First half spread minus 11. Oh God, that was. I should have put an alt. I should have put like an alt spread on that. But anyways, yeah, good for Dan Lanning, man. He got exactly what he wanted. He emptied the sack, I'd say, pretty hard on this one. And yeah,
he emptied the clip, man. He went Scarface on him.
He emptied the clip, and it's a good positive image for Oregon, just like I was talking about last week for Colorado State. Even though they lost, that was a win for Colorado State in the long run. This is a win for Oregon.
And there's no repercussions because they're going to different conferences after this year, Shub. When are they realistically going to play again? I mean, Dan was basically able to just, do whatever he wanted, talk everything, and then just disappear into the void because we do not know when Colorado and Oregon will play a game against each other again.
Probably in a bowl game in like 2029. Like they'll be playing in like the Holiday Bowl in
And then,
2029.
yep, 100% with new coaches because Dion will
Yeah.
be in the SEC, and then Dan Lanning would have found a way to. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if you leave Big 12, Big 10 money at that point, but
I don't know. When an
that'd
SEC
be
job comes up, I think Dan Lanning's sorry,
yeah,
Oregon
I
fans, but
agree.
when a big time
And then
SEC job comes open, yeah.
everybody loses their minds.
Yeah.
And shoot, to finish out the Pac-12, absolute rock fight, UCLA, Utah, disgusting. I don't know how Utah does this. I mean, it is like Iowa, but more appealing, I guess,
Yeah.
because I think if UCLA isn't starting, and it's not Dante Moore's fault, but if they're not playing a freshman quarterback, in Salt Lake City, they probably find a way. But that Utah defense is just so stingy and salty. Great win for the Utes.
Yeah, I'm a sicko and I watched this game pretty much start to finish. um yes, that defense is very salty, and I am salty because you know what I did last week, and Zan as well. We always pick against UCLA, and this is the type of matchup where I traditionally would be all over Utah, and for some stupid reason, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna trust UCLA, and that was very dumb. Hindsight's 2020, but yeah, maybe trusting a true freshman, 18-year-old college quarterback to go on the road to Utah, where Utah plays like a totally different animal and win, probably not the best idea. I mean, the first play from scrimmage was a pick six, which ended up being the difference in the game. And,
Yep.
UCLA did have their chances. I did think UCLA eventually was going to sort of catch up to speed. They had a drop touchdown pass, and then they had another touchdown opportunity later in the game. So I was like, all right, eventually UCLA is going to settle in here, but then they just never did. And I'm sorry, I got to call a spade a spade. Dante Moore was terrible. I know it's a good defense, but he did not look good at all. He looked like he was way in over his head as an 18-year-old freshman quarterback.
It's definitely the lumps. They should be happy he didn't throw 4 picks because that can really ruin a kid. I mean, as a freshman, as if he throws has this atrocious game, sees ghosts and all that. And honestly, I was on the spread UCLA for y'all as well, which I didn't realize. So I got burned from that perspective of it too. And I was waiting for the UCLA comeback. I just was because UCLA is just that kind of team. But Utah and Kyle Whittingham just they shut the door. And one day Cam Rising will play football, Shoop. I don't want to make light because an ACL is serious, but it's like at the rate you see these guys come back from these, I am kind of surprised that he's not back.
Yeah, I did hear some rumors from another source that Rising and Keithy may not have their quote unquote full attention on getting back to playing football this year. So I don't know.
Draft aspiration. Well,
I don't know what
Keithy
to take away from that. Keithy, the tight
Huh.
end. Yeah, Brant Keithy.
Yeah. No, I'm saying I could get him. I can understand him having NFL aspirations. I feel like Cam Rising, you got to put a little more on tape, especially with the injury history.
Rising seems like a day 3 drafted quarterback to me. I mean, that's kind of his ceiling. He is what he. I mean, he's a great college player, but probably a day 3 NFL backup type of guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was very interesting to me because they both came back. Keithy makes sense because you had Kincaid go to the NFL.
Yeah.
So okay, I get it. You want to come and get yours this year as the guy at tight end, but Rising, if you're not focused on coming back to play this year, why did you come back? I don't get it. And the quarterbacks that are coming out this year are looking pretty good. So it doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not going to speculate on that. But
I was gonna say, do you think UF probably beats Utah if that's not week 1 this year?
that's a great question. I mean, we did talk about how UF was the final score was closer than it looked like in that game. I mean,
it's just an interesting exercise.
I think if they replayed and UF played like it did against Tennessee on a neutral field, I think that they could beat Utah, yes. But if they played again at Utah, I think it would be a 1-possession game, but I would probably still give the edge to Utah. But I just want to shout out the defense, 7 sacks, which is nuts. 7 sacks,
Dante.
11 TFLs.
Dante's Inferno right there.
Dante's Inferno. Shout out Jonah Ellis, the defensive end for Utah. 3.5 of those sacks. So he literally had 50% of the team sacks, and he also had 5 TFLs. That's a hell of a day if you're a defensive player. Yeah, Utah did what it had to do to get it done. And listen, I got to shout out Utah. They are 4-0. They've got wins against Florida, at Baylor, and UCLA, and they have done this without their best player, their starting quarterback, and their starting tight end, who's also very good. So I'd say that's pretty impressive if you're going to ask me. And you got Oregon State next week. It's going to be a rock fight. That is going to be an absolute rock fight, man. That's
Under's paradise.
Yes, it is. But we'll get to that later on.
That's a fun one. Well, let me go to the antithesis of them. Iowa. Like Iowa is what you get when you just don't have the offensive pulse that Utah is able to provide. Good call, Shub, on Penn State covering this one. I really thought that the Hawkeyes would mess around with some black magic turnover voodoo and keep it close, but Penn State said, nah, we are just going to smother you. And it came to my attention that Iowa ran 33 plays the whole game. I mean, like, I run more in the video game. Like that
5-minute quarters in the NCAA game.
Yeah. That's absurd. Like, if I'm an Iowa fan, I am like, you have such a great defense. I mean, this is a top 10 defense. And you are just wasting it with just pure incompetence. I mean, it really doesn't matter. Cade McNamara, Tom Brady, you, me, Joe Montana, it doesn't matter. Because this team just cannot manufacture offense. And I think it's just a shame. And they'll still win the Big Ten West. But great win for Penn State. Great win for Penn State. You beat a stingy defense at home. You did what you were supposed to do. Kept them off the scoreboard, which isn't hard. But you put up 30-something. You put up 30+ on Iowa. And that's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So, awesome win for the Nittany Lions.
What's that meme of the Spider-Man meme where you have the guy taking off? Like, it's yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's Scooby-Doo. It's Scooby-Doo.
It's the Scooby-Doo. Yes, that's right. It's the Scooby-Doo meme. And that Scooby-Doo meme, so it's Spencer Petras. And he's looking at a guy with a mask on, and it's a Spencer Petras mask. And he takes off the Spencer Petras mask, and it's Cade McNamara under there. That's basically my takeaway from this game.
Yeah.
I mean, just put Spencer Petras' name next to McNamara's stat line, and it's looked like the same thing from last year. Also, listen, we'll move on from this game, but listen, it's a tradition on the Saturday Scholars College Football Podcast. I got to give a Zanny bar to Iowa. Like, listen, and this is why. Do you know how many first downs Iowa had in this game?
Like 4?
Iowa had 4 first downs in this game. You know how many fumbles Iowa lost to a turnover in this game?
I'm going to go 4 again.
4. They had the same amount of fumbles as first downs for the whole game.
I can't even do that in a video game.
The video game, when the video game is trying to just say screw you and it wants you to lose, it won't even let you do that. Like, good gravy, man. All right. I think enough said about that. But if you're Penn State, listen, Drew Aller, listen, Iowa's got a great defense. We'll give him that. Drew Aller, that dude might be maturing pretty damn fast, man. If you're Penn State, I'm thinking stock up right now. Stock up on Penn State. I am liking what I am seeing. Boy, the Big Ten East is getting interesting, man. Like, Penn State might be this could be their year, man. This could be their year. I'm kind of getting giddy because
exciting.
It is going to be exciting. Drew Aller is looking the part. All right. What do we want to hit next?
Well, I'll just take it over cross division. A couple Gonzo grudges. Our first one, let me take you to Minnesota. How? You're up 3 touchdowns on the worst team in the conference in Northwestern, and you implode. Like, I thought my Saints implosion today was bad, but at least I think it's an NFL team. You imploded against Northwestern and lost in overtime. That is backbreaking. It's backbreaking for my over pick. It's backbreaking because I took him in a team draft. It's backbreaking because I faded Northwestern in win totals. So that's my grudge that I have against Minnesota. Just poor play all around. You should never blow a multiple touchdown lead to Northwestern.
That's a big yikes from me. I didn't watch that game, but yeah, that's a big yikes from Minnesota. Yeah, we're enough said on that. It's looking a little ugly there, but they are in the Big Ten West. Like we say every time, they're in the Big Ten West. Shout out to Ben Bryant and Northwestern though. They're doing better than we would have thought. So shout out to them. Like good for them, man. Good for them. Seriously. All right. Back to the SEC. A&M Auburn. I was stupid enough to take Auburn to win this game outright. And I just want to say I, again, was paying attention to this game because I also bet on Auburn +8 on the spread. Few things from this game. One, A&M looking very good. A&M's defense is good. That defensive line, I know we were saying it was questionable. I mean, I don't think Auburn's offense can be that bad. Maybe it is that bad, but A&M's defensive line was phenomenal. Auburn was consistently playing behind the chains this entire game. They couldn't do anything. So a part of that, I think, is Auburn's incompetence, but mainly because of A&M's front. Very, very good. If you're an Aggie fan, I still think they're in this. They don't have an SEC loss yet. They don't. A&M is still in the SEC race, SEC West hunt. So, and two, what does Texas A&M have that a lot of other teams don't? They got quarterback depth. Because I don't know about you, but I saw Max Johnson come into that game. Max Johnson looked like the better quarterback. That man dropped in some dimes into the bucket. Some dimes into that Evan Stewart bucket, man. And I was like, holy crap.
Brother.
Max Johnson, I feel like that dude has been like all over the SEC West at this point. But
oh yeah, I remember when he started.
Max Johnson looked pretty damn good, man. He might be. We've been giving Wegman a lot of hype, and Wegman got banged up there. He got taken out of the game. I like what I saw from Max Johnson. I loved what I saw from the A&M defense, and the hope is still there, man. The hope is still there, but we're not going to jump the gun. And as far as Auburn, good Lord, man, quarterbacks,
they're in trouble.
Quarterbacks suck. I'm sorry, I just got to call it like it is. Total between Thorne, Gariner, and Ashford, 9 of 23, 56 yards. They only had 56 passing yards between three quarterbacks. I think Oklahoma State, I think Mike Gundy's quarterback rotation did better than that.
No, I agree. Dude, that under feels secured, man. I mean, they got fat on light food. Peyton Thorne, like, I saw the spread is 16 versus Georgia. That's criminal. I know Georgia's been, I'm going to say that for when we get to that point. But the point is, you couldn't establish the run game. Jarquez Hunter is your best back, and he only goes 9 for 53. I mean, this game was only pseudo competitive because Ruben Owens, 5-star stud, by the way, had that fumble that they ran back, and then Jimbo didn't secure the edge and make the hit like he was supposed to. It's a rough year one for Hugh Freeze and another bad team pick for Gonzo, which, I mean, that's fine, it happens. But
yeah, I took the over on them as well, so I'm eating a little crow.
And I wasn't trying to rub anything in your face at all, Steve. I just I think when I see Peyton Thorne not panning out like they thought and having these quarterback issues, it's concerning. Granted, it is college football, though. You never know. Man might go out and ball versus Georgia. Probably unlikely. But and it's one conference loss. And with how down the SEC has been, they can still find a way. Finish this year, 5-3 and get out okay. But 10 points, didn't score a touchdown in the fourth quarter, even though it is a good A&M defense, that is a little concerning, especially with kind of the offensive wizard that Hugh Freeze is.
I agree. I think my analysis from this game is stock's a little down on Auburn versus preseason expectations, but we'll see. And if you're an A&M fan, like I've been saying, man, it's still there. Miami's looking pretty good. I think it's all there for A&M still. I still think they're an SEC West contender. We need more sample size. They got Arkansas next week, so they still got a chance to move to 4-1.
Let me get into that real quick. LSU, Arkansas. Nerve-wracking. It was more of a sigh of relief than jubilee. I didn't want to have to use the walk-off field goal to beat Arkansas, but what matters is winning the game, winning the boot. LSU, defense just sold in the second half. More so the secondary. I mean, just Luke has, and I remember his recruitment. Like Luke has a tight end, got his. They just obliterated that LSU secondary. Great win for the Tigers. Gutsy win for the Tigers. Those games with Arkansas are always a rock fight. And I think Arkansas, even though they lost the game, I think they'll take a lot of that hard-nosed play into the A&M game and give us a good one in the Southwest Classic. But that's all
Was
I got to
Luke
say about LSU is
Luke Haas was
what's
a
up?
4 or 5-star tight end, if I'm not
Oh
mistaken.
yeah, like
He was from
out of
he's from
Oklahoma.
Zan's high school, Bixby. I
Oh,
think
I
he
did
was
not know
committed to
that.
OU. I thought he was committed to OU, and then
Yeah, they
because I knew,
flipped
yeah,
him.
yeah, and then Arkansas
He's
got him.
good,
Yeah,
man.
he's a
He is
freshman. He's
good.
a true freshman,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, that
He's
man's
freaking
looking good.
good.
Shout out to Arkansas for landing him. If anything, I
Oh
mean, he was
yeah.
committed
I
to
mean,
OU.
they played. They played much better than I expected. LSU basically a 3-touchdown favorite, and Jaden Daniels got his. I mean, he was able to hit those deep passes and move the ball, but it is very concerning to especially Saturday night in Death Valley, the fact that it came down to such a close game. KJ Jefferson's a good quarterback, man. Like we said in win totals, if KJ can stay healthy, there's a little bit more, even after a loss as bad as BYU, you know, there's still a ceiling for Arkansas to reach. And you've seen this with teams. Remember when Pitt won the ACC a few years back? Beat them Western Michigan. So
Yep.
those losses do happen, and you can still have great seasons after the fact.
Give me a very brief answer because we've already ran a
I
lot of
will.
time here. As
I
an
will.
LSU fan,
Yep.
after what you've seen from 4 games of LSU and what you saw from Florida State against BC and Clemson the last 2 weeks, and we all know how that game went against FSU in week 1. As an LSU fan, after you saw LSU really struggle against those teams, how are you feeling?
Still optimistic. Very concerned with the secondary.
Yeah,
But the
I would
offense is
agree.
there.
I would agree. Well, I think the SEC West is up for grabs, man. I think there's 3 teams that are still in contention there, unless I'm forgetting one. But
No,
I think
nope.
Alabama,
LSU, Bama, A&M.
yeah, I'd say I'd still give the slight edge to Alabama, even with Jalen Milroe because of the defense. LSU is just tough, man. It's tough to read them right now. They seem inconsistent.
Yes.
And then I'm not riding off A&M just yet. I really am not.
You shouldn't. Nobody should.
So that's what I see in the SEC West. But it should be interesting. All right. Well, let's see here. We got a lot of games to talk about. Let's talk about some Big 12 here. Let's run through some Big 12. We got a lot of Big 12 fans on this podcast, naturally. And we'll do a quick rundown here. Conference opener for a lot of those teams. Texas. I didn't watch this one because I figured.
Me either.
I mean, why would you?
And they did. Yeah. They took care of business against.
They took care of business.
Staggering. Baylor's in trouble, man. I'm cooked on that over.
If
they're not getting there.
If you're a Texas fan, this is what you've been wanting your teams to have been doing to inferior Big 12 competition for years now, and they're finally doing it. Last year, this would have been like a 30 to 24 game, and Texas would be flirting with disaster against them.
Yep.
And find a way to lose. This year, they beat the crap out of them 38-6. And if you're a Baylor fan, oh God, man, we keep saying it every week, man, but Dave Aranda might be in trouble. Hey, this is not good. If you're Baylor, this is not good.
This ain't it.
This ain't it. If you're Oklahoma State,
cool.
yeah,
talk to me. Won the world. I mean, come on.
Listen, I tried to follow this one as much as I could. I wish Dan was here to talk about it because he saw it in its entirety. Well, one, there's a lot more offense than I think either fan base would have expected because the over-under in this game was like 36.5. So that got like clipped in by halftime too. Ryan Brecht for Iowa State, Rocco Becht for Iowa State. Oklahoma State, classic cowboy defense, making these second string, third string quarterbacks look like Heisman contenders. He had a breakout game against them. I mean, Iowa State scored 7 against Ohio the previous week. Alan Bowman was the guy for OSU. I mean, he was not great, but he also might still be better than what they have. I think they really need to just move on to Rangel. Ollie Gordon had a good day, but there's no reason to deep dive into this. I mean, these
No.
were two of the bottom teams in the Big 12. Like, in my opinion, probably two of the bottom three teams in the Big 12. If you're an Oklahoma State fan, man, it's rough right now. It's rough. The whole fan base is clamoring for big changes, and I think that's what needs to be done. And good for Iowa State. Good for Iowa State to get this win, because I don't think they're going to get many of them the rest of the season either. But
I agree. Speaking of the opponent that they play, I want to say this. Yeah, I think they take on OU this week. OU, slept walk through this one against Cincy, and that was enough. I mean, one on the road, one by a couple touchdowns. I don't have much more to say about that.
I watched this one. Yeah, I watched this one. I had some interest in it. I thought Gabriel, especially in the first half, definitely wasn't the sharpest. I thought he missed a few opportunities to really step on their throat. But at the same time, Cincy kind of held their own. Cincinnati's defense is still very solid. It's just their offense couldn't do anything. Emory Jones did not play very well at all. I think, Cincinnati's better than we expected, because we had low expectations for this team. They are a little bit better than that. And if you're OU, I think you really got to be happy with what you saw from the defense, because OU's defense is looking like they might be a lot improved from last year, which is what they've been wanting to see. But I still think the book is out on Gabriel in this offense. I still don't know if, they beat up on some bad teams earlier in the year. I still think the verdict is out on their offense. I want to see them put up points against better teams, but we'll see. We'll see. But good for them. Good for OU.
How about K-State?
Yeah,
you gotta wonder, is it different if Plumlee plays? But in the reality that we're in, he did not, and you won by multiple scores. Against probably the best. BYU might have something to say about that, but one of the best of the newcomers in the Big 12. That was a great win for the Wildcats.
I'm going to give a Shuby snack to DJ Giddens, running back for Kansas State.
Yeah.
If you had him in your fantasy team, you would have had 30 carries for 207 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground, which is absurd.
That's insane.
And then on top of that, he had 8 for 86 receiving.
Oh my God.
He was their leading receiver.
300 all-purpose yards. That is nuts.
Yes, he would have been a fantasy monster. I didn't get to watch this game in its entirety. They were going neck and neck. These two teams, they were going neck and neck with each other. And then Kansas State really pulled away there at the very end in the fourth quarter. But, UCF held their own there for a good bit. But I think Kansas State still was the better team at the end of the day. I mean, UCF with a backup quarterback putting up that type of fight. Timmy McClain, shout out him. He did a pretty good job, I'd say, for given the circumstances. So good for UCF. I don't think they can hang their hats on that one. I think they're going to rack up a few wins here in their inaugural Big 12 conference play season.
Hey, like I said, I don't think they're good enough to beat the win total, but I still think they're good enough to go 6-6 and make a bowl game.
Agreed. And good bounce back for K-State too.
Speaking of the other side of Kansas, KU 4-0. Apparently, Shoop, this is the first time KU's been 4-0 since 1915. I did not come up with that. I took that from a podcast I listened to. Shout out Cover 3. That's insane, dude.
Were they not 4-0 last year?
Or maybe it's or maybe it was back-to-back seasons. It was something along those lines.
They were 4-0 last year, remember? I think, yeah, and they were ranked for it could be back-to-back.
It was back-to-back seasons. My apologies. I kind of butchered the stat there. But,
either way, we know what you mean. Either way, good for them, man. Good for them. Yeah, I do have a grudge. I do have a grudge here.
Yeah.
I had BYU plus 10.5. See what the final score is?
Oh, man. Oh.
And that was because BYU was going to go for 2 to make it a 10-point game. And then they had a false start on the 2-point try. So they had to move it back, and they just kicked the PAT to cut it to 11 instead of make it a 10-point game. And that cost me the cover. Back. So yeah, that's a grudge there.
Well, I'll go to my grudge, unless you want anything else to say about Kansas. I got my grudge. Texas Tech, just period. I told you this offline. I banked a lot on this team. I reached for them in the team draft. I took for them to go to the Big 12 championship. I took their over. This team's not even going to make a bowl game. Thank you, Texas Tech.
Oof. Yeah.
Shout out West Virginia. That's the takeaway. Shout out West Virginia. Oh my goodness. I did not think they'd be 3-1. That is awesome for them.
Oh, phenomenal for West Virginia. I mean, if you're a Mountaineer fan, what do you got to say about Neil Brown now? I
Yeah.
you you can't fire him now, that's for sure. I mean,
Nope.
this is hell of a job by Neil Brown in West Virginia. I feel really good for them, and they're obviously a lot better than we thought. 3-1,
You
and
won the
they
backyard
lost and put up
brawl
a
for
good fight against a Penn State team that's looking pretty good. And if you look at
Mhm.
Penn State's schedule, I'd say West Virginia held their own at Penn State too in that environment. They did a way better job than Iowa
Oh
did. I'll
yeah.
tell you that. So good for West
And
Virginia,
and,
and
and
then
Chub,
Texas Tech, man, yikes.
yeah. I mean, it's not like Shuck was really gonna be him, but now they're in trouble, man. Like
I feel really stupid
just
for our preseason win total takes on Texas Tech because, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. The numbers were
they can
telling
speak
me
for
that
me.
this was an
I'm
under.
moronic.
The numbers are telling me this was an under, and I decided to override those because I was like, it doesn't make sense. I have to be high on Texas Tech. They're a dark horse team this year. It looked like it was on paper, but uh,
Hey, but dude, West Virginia, TCU at Houston, at TCU at Houston, home versus the Pokes at UCF, home versus Baylor, at OU versus Cincy at Baylor. Dude, you could squeak a bowl game out of this probably. Like that's insane.
oh, I know. And if you're Texas Tech, I don't think 1-3 was what you were looking at. I think if you were to look at Texas Tech's schedule earlier in the year and you would look at these first 4 games, you would have said worst case scenario, like absolute worst case nightmare scenario for Texas Tech, they're 2-2. This is a 1-3. This is not. This is like doomsday scenario for them.
Yeah, it's rough going in year two over there, unfortunately. Just a shame. I bought high on them and I am getting no returns, which that's what happens when you gamble like that.
Last Big 12
Man.
matchup, Iron Skillet, TCU pulled away in the second half, big time. Chandler Morris had a great day. Definitely was the better quarterback of the two between him and Preston Stone. Preston Stone had a couple picks there. Imani Bailey had a great day for TCU on the ground as well. I mean, TCU, they lost to Colorado. I think a lot of people are like, probably ripped them off after that. Could TCU be that team this year that could backdoor their way back into the Big 12 championship game and be a good team, a ranked, a top 20, top 15 caliber team, potentially rest of season?
Oh, I think
And
absolutely.
we
I
just look
mean,
back and said, oh, yeah, they kind of got that. They kind of got, the Dion, you know, mystery Colorado
yeah.
factor in week 1.
No, I think it's very possible, and I'm hoping for it as someone who took their over. I think you might have been on that with me too. So
Like I said, everyone's going to write them off because of that Colorado loss in week 1. But I look at TCU and I'm looking at them and I'm saying they still might be one of the best 4 teams in the Big 12,
yes,
and
and that would,
they
I mean,
have a
you make a
path to the Big 12 championship game. Though that schedule does look pretty tough. Though I just took a look at it. They got to play Texas, OU, at Tech, at Kansas State. Yeah, maybe
they'll
not.
beat Tech. They'll beat Tech, but that's a I know that's a hey, you made the natty, so you get to play this. That's
Agreed.
but I think they'll be all right moving forward. Is
That's our
there
Big
a
12 rundown of the week, folks.
yes? Just to shout out some close G5 games. Troy bounced back and beat Western Kentucky, which was badly needed if they were going to keep, even though I know James Madison's on the other side of the division, but they still needed to get that win. And then Wyoming beat App State.
Yep.
Wyoming, they have been a little G5 darling, racking up some really nice wins, and that's really good for the Cowboys out there. I feel like nobody pays attention to Wyoming outside of Wyoming fans and people who know that Josh Allen went there. So really good win
I
for the
think the
Cowboys.
Mountain West is legitimately going to be a really fun title race this year.
Yes.
Fresno State's the clear number 1. I think we all can agree on that. But outside behind them, you got some teams there for that second spot. I think like it's looking pretty good there in the Mountain West. Like it's going to be a fun race.
I was watching Boise State. They got this kid, Gene T, Jane T. I apologize if I said it wrong. He broke off some huge runs for San Diego State, had 2 tutties and 205 yards. I mean, and then Air Force, against San Jose State, who their record doesn't indicate it, but they're half decent at that Cordero kid at quarterback. But Air Force has just continued to just roll, and I've learned quick, and I am no longer fading Air Force. So a lot of good teams in that conference, and they don't get the spotlight they deserve to, because they're always playing Thursday night, Friday night, and you're worrying about NFL. You're going out Friday night or you're winding down. So no one gets a look at these teams, but they have a lot of quality teams that could beat a fair decent amount of like those lower tier Power 5 schools.
How about a couple Pac-12 after dark matchups that I was watching towards the end of the day? Nice part about living on the West Coast is that I really sort of get to live the Pac-12 after dark life, and I really do enjoy it. It's just sort of like all the crazy games are out of the way. It's like settling down for the evening. A lot of people on the East Coast are in bed, and then you're just kind of chilling there watching those late night Pac-12 games. And I enjoy it. And it's the last year of it, RIP, but I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts. USC was surprisingly sort of in a fight against Arizona State. And I watched this game. USC clearly was the better team. I feel like USC was really playing with its food. And I thought USC just like when they wanted to score, it's like they just marched down the field in like 3 plays and scored every single time. Like it was one of those where it's like the meme where it's like you got the guy sitting up on the chair with the controller.
Yep.
It was like every other drive. All right, USC. All right, 3 plays, 4 plays. Arizona State cuts it to a 1-possession game. All right, score 4 plays. Bang. That's it. Caleb Williams does his thing, and then Arizona State kept shipping back, man.
That's the thing. Like I would expect this score if Jaden Rashada was playing quarterback, not with Drew Pine at court. Granted, he's kind of familiar with playing against USC from his Notre Dame days, but I was very surprised to see that this game was even remotely competitive. When
me too,
my impression is that everything's going wrong at ASU, not because of toxicity, but because they don't have the guys,
and like half their team is injured right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the fact that you only lost by 2 touchdowns to USC, I mean, you covered. That's great for ASU.
I think the indictment here is on USC's defense. You should not be giving up 4 touchdowns to Arizona State under any circumstance, in my opinion, if you want to be like a college football playoff contender.
And I might have a statement about that defense as we move into a different segment down the road as a kind of a preview. But
shout out Cameron Scattaboo for Arizona State.
Right.
From another Shuby snack.
From Sac State.
Yep. I watched him a couple weeks ago when they played Oklahoma State. I got to see him in person. He did well there. Kenny Dillingham had him throwing the ball a little bit there. He had him throw 3 passes, and he completed 2 of them. And a couple of those passes looked pretty damn nice, man. He had a better QBR than Drew Pine for what that's worth.
Did he complete more passes than Cade McNamara?
I mean, I think I would give him a shot. I'd let Cameron Scattaboo play quarterback for Iowa. Also on the ground, he went for 111 yards and a touchdown, and he also caught 4 passes for 79 yards and a touchdown. The man is a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Cameron Scattaboo for Arizona State. Don't forget that name. All right. And the other Pac-12 after dark doubleheader that was going on was Washington and Cal. And listen, Washington is a wagon.
Oh, yeah.
Washington is a wagon. Michael Pennis and these receivers, this passing attack is so damn good, man. It is so fun to watch.
They should be a top 5 team. I think it's egregious that we want to reward Georgia for sleepwalking. Okay, they've earned it. They've won 2 in a row. So let's throw that. But Michigan has been Michigan has not covered a spread this year. I'm pretty sure they're 0-4 against the spread. They might have covered the Rutgers spread though. I'm not 100%. So I guess don't quote me on it. But point is, they play these sleepwalk games, and Washington is out here, beating the tar out of Boise State, putting up a ton of points. I mean, I cannot wait till they get their marquee matchup to show what they're about, because it's not a disparity of talent. They are a legitimately good football team.
We're going to nitpick here. I'd say the defense is still a little suspect, but again, we talked a bit on win totals. Washington's defense was 82nd last year off the top of my head, somewhere in the 80s in efficiency defensively last year. It's same thing with USC, same thing with Oregon. It was, if one of these teams, same thing with UCLA. You have the offense. Well, UCLA doesn't have the offense. I think we know that. But UCLA notwithstanding, you get your defense, either of those teams, into the top 50, inside the top 50. That's all you can ask for. And Washington's defense does look improved. But yeah, it's not the greatest. But again, we're just nitpicking here. They don't need that defense to be Georgia to win the Pac-12. They need Michael Penix in the offense to be top 3, top 2, top 1 in the country and have that defense be like 40th. They can win the Pac-12. Same goes with Oregon. Same goes with USC. And
I mean,
they did this without McMillan too. They had McMillan out.
Yeah.
And then, all right, we'll just throw it to Jalen Polk and Rome Odunze. They're disgusting. They're so fun to watch too.
127, 2 touchdowns for Polk, 125, 2 touchdowns for Odunze. I mean, you've just got 2 very high level first round NFL wide receivers you can just throw the ball to. And it's just not fair. And it is amazing how they went from having to just scratch and claw to get points with incompetent offenses a couple years ago.
Jimmy Lake,
Yeah. The Jimmy Lake era.
Insane.
Man.
Yeah, Washington fans, man, y'all enjoy the season. That's all I got to say. Like, you sit back and enjoy the hell out of this season. Enjoy every play. Just soak it in.
Yep.
That's what I'd be doing. And just reflect on 2019 Jimmy Lake offenses. That's all I got to say. Look where you are now.
I thought Penix was washed when he left Indiana. This is amazing.
Oh, sir.
I mean, ready for my absurd LSU comparison? He's like Joe Burrow light. He comes from a Big Ten school, and in his second year with the program, with 2 very stud wide receivers, starts lighting it up. So we'll see where the journey keeps going. But every time I see these guys, I think of a modern version of Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson. And I never thought that something like that would happen again in college football. So it's really cool to see some version of it happening out west, especially for a team like the Huskies.
I love Washington, man. I just love that we're being validated on our preseason takes too, because we said it on record. We all thought Washington was the best team in the Pac-12 going into the season. Not a lot of other people said that. Everyone else was saying USC, Oregon. We were like, no, we think Washington's the best team. I like that we're being validated so far. But I mean, Oregon is pretty damn good too. Like, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun this year.
It's going to be great.
But
me taking them to win the conference cancels out my win total. I say that every pod, but
I agree.
I mean, it's been a true change of heart. Like for months, I've been on that.
Big Ten rundown here, because we didn't cover a few of these games. Wisconsin took out Purdue, and they handled Purdue pretty well, 38-17. That was on Friday night. Braylon Allen did his thing. Braylon Allen, if you're playing college football fantasy, he's like, one of the top running backs. We take him early on every single week. And
it's him and Corum.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Corum and Braylon Allen basically had like nearly identical stat lines. If you look at them here, Michigan against Rutgers, man, that was a little bit of a rock fight in the first half between Michigan and Rutgers. Yeah, Rutgers defense is not bad at all. I mean, we said it on win totals. They were 50th last year. They're a little bit better this year.
It's gonna hit. It's gonna hit.
I told you, man. I was on Rutgers.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
we're on it together.
Rutgers. Listen. Yeah, screw Michigan. Who cares about Michigan? Let's talk about Rutgers.
Yeah.
They got Wagner.
The Rutgers angle here.
They got Wagner next week, which means they're gonna push, and then just win me one more.
I think who that one more is, don't they?
They got Michigan State at home. They got Indiana.
There it is.
They got at Iowa. They got at Iowa, which I think is winnable. They got Maryland, which I think is sadly winnable. You got Wagner to push, and then you got 2 probably slam dunk winnable games, and then you have 2 fringe winnable games. They're going to do this, man. We might be talking about a bowl game in Piscataway, New Jersey this year. We might be talking bowling.
I love it.
We are going to be bowling in New Jersey.
We talked about the defense, and we said, that they just weren't as putrid as, they want us as we perceive Rutgers. And with where the number was too, if this were 5.5, I'd still be nervous, but just putting out that 4.5, I'm like, oh, come on, against this schedule. And you only lost by 24 to Michigan. Heck, I mean, that's a win in itself right there. In the past, Rutgers loses this game by 60 to Michigan.
What other podcast brings up Rutgers, Michigan, and then just goes into a Rutgers praise tirade, even though they lost
You
this
know,
game. Only
because
we do.
because
Only on this podcast do we do that. Yeah,
well, I
then
mean,
there's
what
that Michigan team. Yeah,
do you
that
want to
other
talk about?
team.
Oh, can JJ McCarthy raise his level? It's like you can go to a billion places if you want that angle.
Well,
I
now
mean,
that we've seen the Big Ten unfold a little bit here, let me read you Michigan's games. So how are we going to know? How late do we know Michigan's actually really good? You want to see Michigan's next games? I'm going to read it off to you.
please
At
do.
Nebraska, are we going to know if
Okay,
Michigan's really that good? No.
definitely not. They
At
didn't even come
Minnesota,
here.
no.
Oh,
We're not going to
they'll win
find
that
out.
game by 4. Yeah.
Indiana, no.
Oh my gosh.
Michigan State, no. Purdue, no.
Oh my gosh.
We're not going to find out if Michigan's actually good legitimately until November 11th when they go at Penn State.
Wow, that is a full 2 months.
We're
Just
not going
like
to
from when the
know.
season starts.
And I would like to give the Minnesotas and the Michigan States, the benefit of the doubt, but the middle to down bottom tier of the Big Ten is not that good this year, man.
Shoob, these scores along those lines, it's all the same game. Get ready. 30-3 versus ECU, who is not that good. 35-7 versus UNLV. 31-6 versus Bowling Green, who got their doors blown off by Ohio this weekend. And then 31-7 versus Rutgers. This is the same game. It's Groundhog Day.
Yeah, Michigan's they're just going to be on cruise control, and we're not going to know how good they actually are, and they'll be 9-0 until they play Penn State, and then we'll find out. But yeah, that's Michigan's schedule this year. Illinois was really, FAU gave them a pretty good game. Illinois was down by, I think, 10 points going into the second quarter there. Then they came back, won that game. Good performance from FAU. Illinois definitely is not living up to the billing this year. Indiana had to go into 4 overtimes to beat Akron.
Wow.
They had to go to 4 overtimes to beat Akron at home. Sheesh.
I think Akron had a chance to walk it off too, and they might have choked that away, but I can't tell you affirmatively.
I mean,
regulation. But point is,
I don't care. I don't care who you are. If you're a Power 5 team, you should not be going into 4 overtimes against Akron.
No.
Enough said.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's enough Big Ten.
That got disgusting really quick.
Yeah, it did get disgusting.
Hey, how about Mizzou? They beat Memphis. Riding the G5 angle. I was proud of Memphis keeping it close, but
yeah,
Mizzou's
that game went as
4-0.
expected. Yeah, they are. Yes, that game went as expected. I knew Memphis would give them a good fight. I don't think there's no bad things you can take away from that game, in my opinion. Missouri's skilled position players, Schrader, Burden, Cook, all did well. Memphis, solid G5 team. Kentucky really took it to Vandy. A lot of that had to do with turnovers towards the beginning of the game. Good for them. Tennessee definitely blew the doors off of UTSA. UTSA has been a bit of a disappointment compared to what expectations are this year. They're 1-3.
Yeah.
The Roadrunners are. Tennessee, good. I didn't watch it obviously, but the score looks good. I don't know how much stock you can put into this, but at least that's what you would want to see after a bounce back. After a loss to Florida. Georgia really was just effing around with UAB there for a while.
It's not grudge, but I was annoyed. UAB is not good.
No.
You're telling me you couldn't beat them by 40? Really? You let them score multiple touchdowns on you? This isn't even like the UAB we know. This is built together, Trent Dilfer, hodgepodge, bad UAB, and you get 21 points to them.
Yeah.
These Georgia games, all these games with the top 5 are just aggravating because they all feel like these sleepwalk zombie games with this has been every Georgia game for the most part. Except the South Carolina game. It was a little more dicey.
If you're an AP voter, why are you putting Georgia at number 1? What has Georgia done and who have they beat to deserve the number 1 ranking? They beat UT Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, and UAB. What have they done to show you that they're the number 1 team in the country?
they're doing the 2 championship. That's what it is. He who holds the crown keeps the throne. That's what they're doing. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's what this is. And even
See,
though like a team like Washington should be a top 5 team, the voters want to reward the blue bloods who were successful last year and are still
and
undefeated.
half of them don't even watch the games.
Correct. I didn't even watch. I love football. I didn't watch Georgia UAB.
Yeah. ACC, UNC took care of business against Pitt. Drake May looked a little bit better, but their defense gave up 24 against the Pitt offense that had really been struggling. I still am just having I'm having such a tough time with this UNC defense, man. I really am. It's one of those things where I really have to see it to believe it. But Pitt did turn the ball over 3 times as well. Like Pitt lost a turnover battle 3-0. I look at this and I'm thinking to myself, UNC, you still have some things to prove to me. I'm sorry, but you beat South Carolina, who's not that great. You were in a dogfight against App State, who just lost to Wyoming last week. You beat Minnesota and looked good against Minnesota. Minnesota just lost to Northwestern. And then you beat Pitt. Pitt lost to Cincinnati and West Virginia. Like all of the teams that have been on UNC's schedule have been probably worse than we all thought. They have a bye week to prepare for Syracuse, which is nice. I really think the verdict's still out on North Carolina. They're ranked number 15. I know I keep sounding like a hater, but I still think the verdict is out on them. I'm not buying it just yet.
So we're not going to know until they host Miami. And then really all of November after Campbell is going to be make or break for them. Because bye week for Syracuse, but it's at home. UVA win at Georgia Tech might kind of be tricky for them. Campbell and then Duke at home, which will be a good game at Clemson at NC State. So kind of like Michigan, we're not going to know for a while.
Yeah, Duke and Miami rolling against some Northeastern schools, UConn and Temple. Yeah, both of those teams are looking good. Same score too, 41-7.
Yeah.
Syracuse really messing around with Army there, but pulled away in the second half. Syracuse extremely quiet, is 4-0, just like last year. Dino Babers doing his thing, man. And they got Clemson this week. We're gonna pick it, but don't sleep on the Cuse. Once again, don't sleep on the Cuse. 4-0, 4-0 Orange. Virginia Tech, 1-3 after a loss to Marshall. Yeah, Marshall's 3-0. Shout out Uncle Boomer. Uncle Boomer, if you're watching this, great pick in the teen draft. Marshall's 3-0 now. Yeah, and if you're Virginia Tech, man, Brent Pry. I just don't know how much longer he's gonna last, man. I mean, this is not looking good so far.
Like, how bad was it with Fuente? Like that's what I'm wondering. I mean, I cannot, dude. A couple more weeks, we'll be able to lock up this under, man. Like,
I mean, and if I look at Virginia Tech, the rest of their schedule, yeah, I do. I bet personal money on Virginia Tech under 5.5 wins. Their schedule, they got Pitt at home next week, which winnable, but I still think I'd give the edge to Pitt. You got at Florida State. You got Wake at home. I guess that is winnable. So I guess they do have some winnable games. Syracuse, I give the edge to Syracuse. They're big time. At Louisville, SNL, at BC.
They probably win that.
Toss up.
BC is not.
NC State at home. All right. The more that I go through their schedule, it's actually not that difficult at all.
Virginia,
there could be better days ahead.
Virginia is bad, but Virginia, and Virginia was, they made NC State sweat, and fortunately, Brandon Armstrong was able to lead that game. It must have felt great for him, that game-winning drive to walk it off for UVA. But the Cavs are not as atrocious as the record may indicate, or we may indicate, even though I still am very comfortable with this under.
Yeah, Virginia's 0-4, but like you said, they're a little bit better than we would have expected, but we had a very low bar for them. That's not really saying much. And then NC State's also a team that that 3-1 record is very misleading. If you're going to ask me, I look at NC State and I'm like, they got Louisville, Marshall, Duke, Miami, at Wake,
Oh,
at
they got
Vautech, and then
Marshall.
UNC. Yeah, they got Marshall as
Oh
their remaining non-con.
man,
Like NC State might be in trouble here. They got to play
I
Louisville, Duke, Clemson, Miami, UNC.
man, I
I
took
don't
over
know.
7. That's gonna get sweaty. That's gonna get sweaty, man. Oh
That's gonna
boy.
get. I don't know, man. I'm looking
I
at the
think we
schedule
both
and
took the under.
I'm thinking 6-6 or under here for NC State.
Yeah, that looks like a just miss out for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely a
Hey,
down year
yeah, but
for NC State.
Hey, but you can't get them all. I mean, and yeah, clearly the Anai Armstrong reunion. Sometimes there's a reason you don't always get back together with your ex. There's usually pre-existing issues there that taint the relationship and continue to fester. So, hey, maybe we just need a couple more weeks. But I mean, yeah, when you need a walk-off field goal to beat Virginia, who you are more talented than, a little concerning.
One sicko game, Georgia Tech beat Wake Forest, which was a little bit of a minor upset on the road. Shout out to Georgia Tech. Haynes King
Yeah,
going in there, going into Winston-Salem and getting it done. Mitch Griffiths was pretty bad in this game. He had 3
Mitch.
interceptions. Yeah, I've said some. Listen, we've all said some really dumb things, but that was my
Absolutely.
me
I do
me
it every
saying that
day.
me saying that this guy wasn't that big of a drop off from Sam Hartman might be the dumbest thing so far. Uh, Wake had 5 turnovers in this game, so this probably is a game that Wake should have won, but they turned the ball over 5 times, so that's how you lose to Georgia Tech at home. That
Yes.
that's how you lose to a bad team like that is you turn the ball over 5 times, and they did.
Georgia Tech's always good for one of these wins too, which is why I was so
Yeah.
nervous about their taking their under, but they find a way to be like UNC or Wake or NC State in a late night game that nobody's watching, and you're like, oh my gosh, Georgia Tech won this game somehow.
Are there any last games that we want to shout out here before we move on? We've covered the board pretty hard here. This might be the latest that we've gone as far as time, but
I'm
we
doing
sprayed the board. You mentioned that Troy over Western Kentucky win. That was, like you said, that's a low key was a pretty big win for
yeah,
Troy. Very big non-conference matchup, G5 non-con matchup there.
no,
Liberty. All right, I got to give a shout out to Liberty for blowing the doors off FIU 38-6. Liberty is 4-0 now. And I look at Liberty's schedule.
like we thought.
Liberty's looking a little bit better than I thought. I'll speak for myself. I knew they were going to be a CUSA, favorite, but I didn't know if or think they were going to be this good. I look at Liberty's schedule, and at Western Kentucky there towards the end of the year, that might be tough, but the rest of the schedule is looking very, very manageable. Like Liberty's schedule has got to be the worst schedule I think I've ever seen, just in general.
It's an independent schedule.
And that's not an exaggeration. Well, it's a CUSA schedule infused with some independent schedule. I don't even know what it is, but it's
yeah,
bad.
I mean,
like at Western Kentucky might be the only game where they're a close favorite or not favored by a lot. So
yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
shout out to
Dude,
them, man.
I took their
that might be 11-1.
I took under 9, no shot. They're clearing everything on here, man.
I think
Like,
Liberty's cruising for a double-digit win season. That's
I think so.
that's for sure.
But speaking of another G5 darling, I'm hopping off the Coastal Carolina bandwagon. Tim Beck ain't it, man. And no. I think even with McCall, Coastal's unfortunately just dipping because when Jamie Chadwell, you're seeing the Chadwell effect, goes to Liberty and they're still humming along just fine. But Coastal, I did not think they were going to lose to Georgia State. Now, granted, we talked about Georgia State's got a dude at quarterback, but
I think running back.
Coastal, yes. No, they're good. No, like LSU plays them in November, and I'm actually like, oh my gosh, like better show up or you're going to have a no going down at the end of the season. But no, I think the Chanticleers are in for some kind of rough times ahead.
Shout out to the Sun Belt, man. They're having some teams that are looking a little bit better than we would have expected. Like we mentioned, Georgia State, they have Marcus Carroll at running back, very good. Georgia State is 4-0, and might be time to start talking about Georgia State as a legitimate Sun Belt contender. They got Troy at home. They got Marshall at home. They got James Madison at home. They got Appalachian State at home. I don't know how they got that.
That's a rough schedule.
What did they have to do to get that schedule? They got like all the tougher teams at home. And they actually got to go play at LSU in the classic SEC second to last week of the regular season, that game. So yeah, Georgia State, man. Shout out them. Shout out ATL there. Oh, did we mention South Alabama? I don't think we did.
I thought about it, but I forgot to bring it up.
Yeah. You beat Oklahoma State by like 25 points last week, and then you drop a stinker against Central Michigan at home. That's just college football in a nutshell right there.
Yep.
That's the classic. Like, that team was like, thought they were the best thing ever after that game. Yep. When they went and beat Oklahoma State, and then they lose to Central Michigan. Oh, you just know what happened there. But
man, they started the game 14-0 too. Just fell apart, man.
Sleep at the wheel. Even if you're South Bama, man, you can't be asleep at the wheel. You just cannot. Wyoming over App State, you already mentioned that. I'm salty about that one for team draft purposes. And yeah, that's pretty much a G5 rundown right there. We already talked about the Mountain West. The MAC, I mean, Ohio they got Rourke back. Ohio is firing on all cylinders. I'm liking Ohio as the best team in the MAC. And I think that Ohio might be, it's early. They're 3-1. They lost to San Diego State week 0. Sorry, they're 4-1. They already got a P5 win against Iowa State. They got a good non-con win at FAU. I'm looking at Ohio, and I legitimately think that 11-1 is on the table here.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have to play Toledo in the regular season. I think 11-1 is...
They should be favored in every game.
I think 11-1's on the table, man. That week 0 loss may be haunting. But let's hope it doesn't come to that.
For what they really, really want to do, yeah. But,
for big goals, yes. But I'm just calling it right now. Ohio 11-1 is looking a little juicy. You got a bold prediction on that too.
I did that. Them or Toledo making the New Year's Six with Rourke having to get hurt, man.
Yeah,
but I did take their over. So
smart man. All right, I think we have plenty covered the college football landscape here, man. What other podcast goes into that deep dive against all the teams, against pretty much everywhere else than Saturday Scholars? Like hey
man, we try, we care out here.
We cover every nook and every cranny in the sport. We just love it. All right.